Episode 130 of the Interpretation Station is called to order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Ahlan wa sahlan. Yes, this is a special episode for my Arabic-speaking followers, fans, if I may call you that. It's been the first in a while. I thought I should get back into making more Arabic episodes for my own benefit, hopefully for your benefit as well, a little bit. So, I mean, the subject of today's episode that we're going to be looking at is obviously the subject that is on everyone's lips at the moment, the situation in Ukraine. I thought to myself that, hell, I've done episodes on that situation in all the other languages, pretty much on the Interpretation Station, you know, French, Russian, Spanish, even Chinese. So I thought it would be good to do one for Arabic as well, just to gain a bit of familiarity with the ideas, the concepts, the big issues that are at stake, and just get an understanding of how best to express those going into English. So the source of the statement, so the statement we're doing today, it's actually by Syria. On the situation in Ukraine to do with Russia. Usually it's the other way around. Usually the boot's on the other foot. Usually, if you look at my the Interpretation Station, the playlist, you'll find several episodes, Russia on the situation in Syria. Well, as I say, this time it's the other way around. So the specific meeting, it took place about a month ago. It was on the 12th of May. It was the 34th special session of the Human Rights Council on the deteriorating human rights situation in Ukraine stemming from the Russian aggression. That was the full title of the meeting. I think I took a couple of statements from this meeting in an episode I made a few weeks ago. I think it was Ukraine and Belarus statements. So in case any of you guys, in case Russian happens also to be in your combination, that'd be an interesting combination. Russian, Arabic, English. I know someone who has that combination, actually. Anyway, so you might find that useful to go and have a look at. But today, as I say, we're just sticking purely to the Arabic. Statement by Syria. So as you can expect it to be pro-Russian in terms of the position. Obviously, Syria and Russia are pretty close allies. So without any further ado, let's see what they had to say. I'm going to bring the statement up on the screen for you. As usual, I will leave a link. As usual, I will be leaving a link to the statement in the comments section. In the description box, rather, I will leave a link to the transcript, and I will leave also a link to the meeting itself, to the statement, so you can go and practice it yourself. Again, I suggest you go and perhaps try and practice the statement, and then record yourself, and then come and watch the show. If you want to really replicate booth conditions, perhaps you want to listen to the. I think at the start of the meeting, maybe the Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet. I can't remember exactly, but someone gave an introduction to basically someone set the stage, so that way you can listen to the intro, get the key words, get the key vocab, and then you can come and do the statement. There was a few other Arabic speakers. There was also Saudi Arabia spoke in this meeting, and Iraq. So if you just scroll down through the list, you can find them there. So anyway, yeah, let's see what I sort of highlighted here. Also, at the end, I'm going to just do a quick site translation to sort of replicate booth conditions to see how I'd approach it if I was going a bit quicker. I must admit, so I've received quite a few tips on this text from my colleague Mohammed Asi, who you may be familiar with, you may know already. He did a lot of the Sunday at 6. He did a couple of Sundays at 6 shows with me earlier on in the year, and he's also done a couple of episodes as well with me, so he's always a great source of knowledge and experience in these issues. Obviously, he's got a lot of experiences at working as an interpreter. So let's have a look. So you should be able to see the statement up on the screen. So the things I've highlighted is just really a guide for myself, just to pick out the sort of key expressions that are used. One other thing I'll say is that also the Syrians did provide an English version, a translated version of the text, which I'm also going to use as a bit of a reference. It's not a bad translation, I don't think. There's some quite good vocabulary. And we'll see what things I agree with and what things I might have changed in that English version that they gave. But anyway, this is the Arabic version. So the first thing I've highlighted, minor thing, I guess. يؤمن الجمهورية العربية السورية بأهمية. So, okay, in the original, in the translation they give this as the Syrian Arab Republic believes in the importance. Perhaps in English, I don't tend to say to believe in the importance that much. I tend to sort of talk about stressing the importance, or underscoring the importance. Minor detail, though. بعيدا عن التسييس والمعايير المزدوجة. Again, forgive my pronunciation if at times I stray from how it should be. I'm still learning. بعيدا. So here, so it basically talks about here how they should be upholding universal principles and keeping away from politicization and double standards. Now, in the English translation, they can say away. They as in the Arabic, they use a preposition, away from politicization and double standards, which actually it works quite well. It says, the importance of this, the role of the council in promoting and protecting human rights based on the principles of universality and objectivity, away from politicization and double standards. And it works okay in that context, I must admit. Perhaps for ba'id and that idea I tend to like to express using a verb. Okay, now perhaps the most straightforward verb to go for is rejecting politicization, double standards. For those of you who've watched who've watched a lot of Interpretation Station episodes, you will know that I do like to eschewing politicization and double standards. It's very high register. I think I used it just the other day. I do like to eschew things. Rejecting, putting aside politicization and double standards. Take your pick. Now, the next thing I've highlighted, إعادة تدوير مضمون القرار. Now, here in the English translation they gave, it said recycling, and Mohammed Asi also said that he liked that, recycling the content of resolutions. So yeah, recycling. Sometimes I would say also regurgitating. That's a good sort of pretty high register English word. Often I'll talk about when diplomats, they just keep regurgitating the same speeches. That tends to be the sort of context that I might use it in. So recycle, regurgitate. Now, Mohammed pointed out something interesting to me here about this word here, okay? Al-qarar. What he said was, so here they're actually referring to a resolution. Okay, this is all, at the end of this meeting, the resolution was adopted. I can't remember, I guess it was pretty condemning the Russian invasion, what have you. And he says that, sort of the interpreters over the years, so as to distinguish between the word for a decision and for a resolution, because I believe that al-qarar normally can also be a decision, right? But what they'll tend to say is if it's al-muqarrar, that will be a decision, and al-qarar will be resolution. So there you go. That's from the UN Arabic interpreters, straight from the horse's mouth, as we might say. So I thought that was an interesting little factoid. Let's move on. Okay, so the تحرك غربي ممنهج للتشهير بالاتحاد الروسي. In the just quickly for this word here, the taharruk. So in the English they talk about campaign, and they talk about it comes in the context of a Western campaign. So perhaps if you want to be something more general, it just comes in the context of efforts, or another word Muhammad suggested was designs. You can actually see that I've scribbled that in above, of Western efforts, Western designs, systematic Western designs, lil tashhir. So you want definitely a few synonyms for tashhir. So Muhammad said that his sort of go-to solution for that would be usually to slander. So again, a couple of other options might be to sully. The English translation here gives you defame, to blacken. So there's a few. If you pick one or two. Slander, sully. It's good because they both start with S. Okay. The Russian Federation. By the way, the Al-Ittihad al-Rusi. So I notice he tends to give it the full name in this statement, as opposed to just Russia. I think, for the sake of speed, I think you can just call them Russia. I don't think anyone would mind too much. I think maybe the first time you call them the Al-Ittihad al-Rusi, just call them the Russian Federation. I think after that, just refer to the country as Russia. That's how certainly when it's the other way around. So I'm often in the position where I have to do that from Russian going into English. When Russia is talking about Syria, and they'll refer to them as the Syrian Arab Republic. So what I will tend to do is I'll give the full constitutional name first time around, Syrian Arab Republic, and then I'll just refer to them as Syria after that. Okay, let's then go down to the second paragraph. In Isham al-Majlis bitaswiya al-Niza'a. Okay, so bitaswiya, you want two standard synonyms here, which are settlement and resolution. Okay. And Muhammad also pointed out here, this word here, okay, Isham, in Isham al-Majlis. Usually the go-to solution for Isham is the contribution, okay? But here, he's going to talk about what is required, what the council, sort of referring to the Majlis al-Huquq al-Insan, the Human Rights Council. So they haven't yet contributed, okay? So it's really more to do with their efforts. He would have said here, the efforts of the council to resolve the crisis require, okay? Require tanawul awda, addressing the situation. I also thought you could approach the situation. I think again perhaps the more automatic reaction would be to address the situation, but I think here also to approach the human rights situation in a non-selective manner. And I haven't highlighted, but I think also these words here are worth this expression here. التخلي عن سياسة تجاه الانتهاكات. So it's a policy. التخلي عن سياسة, so to abandon, and it requires abandoning the policy of ignoring violations, overlooking violations. If you want to get more sort of literally turning a blind eye to violations, systematic violations of human rights. Now, the next thing I've highlighted here, التدابير القصرية الأحادية. Now, this is a concept that's has gained a lot of ground, shall we say, in recent years, primarily from Cuba. Actually, is the one that's really highlighted the importance of these measures. These are called unilateral coercive measures, okay? And they're often referred to as just as UCMs, so that's a useful acronym to go for. And basically, the Cubans push it with reference to the embargo, the US embargo against Cuba, which has been in place since about the 1960s, since whenever Castro basically took power in Cuba. And so they're still talking, these unilateral sanctions that were imposed, that they call them, now they have an official sort of name, unilateral coercive measures. And a lot of these, a lot of countries like Cuba and Venezuela, Syria, will criticize these unilateral sanctions that sort of circumvent the Security Council. They're done, as I say, unilaterally. They're not done on a sort of multilateral, collective basis. So here the Syrians are sort of invoking that concept with respect, basically what the West is doing to the Russians. Obviously, what with all the sanctions that have been introduced in the last few months by the European countries, by the West, the US, and so on. So that's something you'll probably hear about quite a bit with reference to the situation in Russia, because now Russia, if you like, is a victim of unilateral coercive measures, UCMs. Now, this is an interesting image, shall we say. أغراق أوكرانيا بالأسلحة الفتاكة. Okay. So if you read the Western press, they will tend to talk about funneling weapons, channeling weapons to Ukraine. Okay, the idea is quite a positive connotation. I think you'll find on the other side the sort of pro-Russia camp, shall we say, Russia, Syria. Note the word that the Syrians go for here, Iraq. So it's not really the idea of funneling, channeling, which could, I guess, be quite positive. It's rather they're just sort of the word that me and Mohammed decided on that we quite like was inundating. Okay, inundating. You know, they're pouring weapons into Ukraine. They're inundating Ukraine with weapons. It's literally, I know it's dumping. Okay, so in fact, in the English version here that the Syrians provide, they use dumping. And I suppose that, because one thing that I know that the NATO countries are doing, for example, is that the Western countries are sending a lot of their old weaponry, slightly outdated weapons systems, to the Ukrainians, and they're being, I think, replaced, certainly for the NATO members, by the newer stuff, the newer, more state-of-the-art technologies. But I believe a lot of the countries like Germany, France, I'm not certain, but they're basically getting rid of their old stocks by supplying them to Ukraine, and they're getting new fancy equipment to replace it. So, because I initially was going to suggest to you, go with the funneling or the channeling, because that's what you hear in the Western media. But perhaps the Syrians have deliberately chosen this image of inundating, this negative connotation, inundating the Ukrainians with lethal weapons, pouring lethal weapons into Ukraine. يؤكد رغبة الدول الغربية. So this might be, reflects the eagerness of the Western countries to escalate the conflict, confirms the eagerness, confirms the desire, attests to the desire, attests to the eagerness. So a few combinations, but it's good to have a couple, as I say again, of these collocations that sound nice in English. Okay, my final paragraph. Okay, مشروع القرار المعروض عليها. Okay, so I realize that literally it's the draft resolution submitted to it. But again, if you just want a shortcut, if the speaker's going very fast, you can just say before the draft resolution before us. I don't think you need to convey the image of it being literally submitted, presented to the council. I think often we'll just say in English, it's the draft decision before us. الذي يتجاهل هذه الحقائق. Okay, so again, this يتجاهل again, which just ignores these facts, which overlooks these facts. Not the very high register solution we talk about is glosses over these facts. It just barely touches on them. To gloss over something really means to just ignore it. With the aim of يسعى. Okay, توجيه اللوم. So which seeks to pin the blame, point the finger, put the blame on Russia, which seeks to selectively pin the blame on Russia for everything that's happening. So again, a couple of ideas. It's always good to have maybe a couple of ideas there for توجيه اللوم. And one last thing I'd say before I just do the site translation. منصفة. Okay, بطريقة منصفة, fairly. You maybe want a couple of synonyms for that, like even-handedly, equally. equitably. This is an idea. Okay, so that's the those were the sort of key words there. Now I'm just going to go through the text again, and obviously what the challenge often is going from Arabic into English, right? It's breaking up these long sentences into shorter, more succinct sentences. So we'll try and do that as we're going along, and I'll just highlight a couple of ideas as on the way. Okay, so President, Human Rights Council has a president, right? President. The Syrian Arab Republic underscores the importance of the role of this council in promoting and protecting human rights. Okay, that's a classic article of faith, as you might say, in the whole, when it comes to the theme of human rights, that phrase, promotion and protection of human rights. Based on universal and objective principles, eschewing politicization and double standards. Maybe here could you put a full stop here? Maybe, yeah. You could just say, and we should eschew politicization and double standards. The holding of this special session. The holding of this special session after less than 2 months after the urgent debate, Jalsa al-Naqash al-Ajal, of the Council on Ukraine, and the regurgitating of the content of the resolution that was adopted back then. These come in the context of systematic Western efforts to slander the Russian Federation. وخدمة للأجندات. Maybe here we could put a full stop, right? We could just maybe say they're in the service of agendas that seek to escalate the situation in Ukraine and to impede a peaceful solution. I'm thinking here, if you're going fast, you could maybe just drop the tawasul ila. Okay, maybe just, okay, you could say and hinder reaching a peaceful solution. Okay, but again, I think you could just say hinder a peaceful solution. And remember, again, if you're a bit of an interpretation station fan, I'd like a few synonyms for this word here. Arqala, to hinder, to hamper, to impede, to obstruct. So the efforts of the council to resolve the conflict require, or call for, that's what that little squiggle is there, call for addressing the human rights situation in Ukraine in a non-selective manner. We should, again, here I'd maybe put a full stop, in a non-selective manner. We should abandon the policy of ignoring systematic violations of human rights and al-fadha'a al-murtaqaba bihaq as-sakan al-Donbass, and atrocities al-murtaqada. So again, a couple of collocations with an atrocity crime, perpetrated against the residents of the Donbass. Committed. Again, that's a good opportunity for another full stop here. And now this al-Iqrar, again, this refers back, doesn't it, to the Yatatallab. So again, we could put in here, we need to recognize that imposing UCMs, unlawful UCMs, against Russia and inundating Ukraine with lethal weaponry and mercenaries reflect the eagerness of the Western states to escalate the crisis and to continue to threaten Russian national security. Syria believes that the holding of this session and the draft decision before us, which overlooks these facts and which seeks to lay the blame on Russia in a selective manner, بنسبة يعبر عن نقش أثبت فشله, perhaps, reflect the utterly futile approach, or maybe epitomize, typify, could we say that? For يعبر, epitomize the utterly futile approach in addressing the issue of human rights in a fair, or should we say, an even-handed and non-discriminatory manner. And here I think we would put a full stop. That's quite a long sentence, which is hard to break up anywhere previously. Where maybe we urge, or maybe just say Syria, just to remind to remind the audience who's speaking, Syria urges the members of the council to reject it. The end. Okay, so there you have it. So that's Syria talking about the situation there in Ukraine. I think you'll find this is a good reflection of the position of most states who are more pro-Russia at any rate. I hope you have learnt a couple of new words, maybe got some new ideas for linguistic solutions that you can use in future on this issue. Again, I want to thank Mohammed for helping me, giving me some useful pointers with some of the words here. If you've enjoyed the episode and found it useful, please do like and share it with any of your colleagues. And of course, do remember to subscribe to the Interpretation Stat channel. Spread it around, spread the good word around. And hopefully it won't be too long before I'm back again with another Arabic episode for you. I'm on holiday from mid-July to mid-August, so I'm hoping that then I might do another episode or two if I have the opportunity. As ever, it's been a pleasure. As I say, all the links that you need are in the description box underneath the episode. And with that, all that remains to be said is that episode 130 of the Interpretation Station stands adjourned.
The train is now leaving the Interpretation Station. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Until next time, folks.